done in Vijnanamaya Kosha. And this creates a new karma, not the. And this particular Vijnanamaya Kosha, where the living entity, when Atma lives in this Vijnanamaya Kosha, at that time, all the activity, whatever it performs, like, the reflection, what has happened earlier and what is going to happen in the future, that living entity tries to do that through this Vijnanamaya Kosha. So, the most important part of this Vijnanamaya Kosha is that we always to be focused on this Vijnanamaya Kosha. It means living entity will be in this creative mode. That living entity, when it is in creative mode, no, that's not needed. And the living entity is in Vijnanamaya Kosha. At that time, he creates the new karma. This new karma can negate our prarabdha karma. Whatever prarabdha karma we are, getting from our previous life, previous millions and millions of lifetimes, that karma, what we bring along with us, this, comes, get into this new body. That karma, he could be negated by the activities of this Vijnanamaya Kosha. That's most important kosha within the subtle body of the human being. We have to be very careful to remain in Vijnanamaya Kosha. Of course, Manomaya Kosha is that. It does the normal activity of the human being, and also Vijnanamaya combined together, that comes the new activity, new karma, where actually we get the jnana, knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or anything. We where the Vijnanamaya Kosha, when the living entity lives in the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the bodies, the 5 parts of the body, the 5 parts of the human body or any body, any material body. This out of the 5 parts of the material body, gross body, we leave the gross body when the death comes. Death comes means gross body is taken away. The function of the gross body is nullified. It is not functioning anymore. It is, we can't use it at all. Like, when a motor car or anything, then it's, it stopped functioning or its engine stops or anything, then, we have to, either, you have to repair, otherwise you have to discard it. But the human body or this material bodies, when stop functioning, then you have to discard it. Anyway, of course, doctors do some medical this thing and, you can revive it, but, discarding. Similarly, the pranamaya kosha, which the air also circulating in the body, because air is needed, because, this our cells, living cells, to survive and take the proteins or, nutrients to various cells of the body. This air is needed. Air helps to circulate the blood and all those nutrients to, given to the each, cells of the body. In the body, there are millions and millions of cells. It is combination of the cells, this body. Although this, without the cells, of course, the living entity, the body of the living entities, combination of the millions of cells. Those cells needs the nutrients. So that's actually what the food we eat. Out of the food we eat, the nutrients comes from the food we eat. So these activities are, when this pranamaya kosha, the vayu goes away, this body is discarded. But whereas only thing goes with the atma is the manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, and other kosha is the anandamaya kosha. This kosha is very, very important. Very, very important means that's where the living entities feels very happy when he is in anandamaya kosha. The atma goes into live in the anandamaya kosha, because this is the covering of the bodies. It's the pie covering within the body, like, gross, then these all subtle. The gross is annamaya kosha, then pranamaya kosha. These are gross, which we live in when the death comes. But this Vijnanamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha goes with the Atma. These are the subtle bodies. And here all the impressions, whatever we have done in millions of our lifetimes, millions and billions of lifetimes, because we are Sanatana. Sanatana means there is no end, no beginning, no end. We are there, always there, we will remain always. Either we are living in the material world or we will be in the spiritual world. Wherever we are there, but we are there, always there. There is no time when Krishna tells Bhagavad Gita in the Arjuna. When Arjuna was asking questions, when Krishna said, the same Bhagavad Gita I taught to Sun God, Vivaswan, millions of years ago. So, actually, Krishna is contemporary of Arjuna, right? He is cousin of Arjuna. So he is taken that form. But Krishna says, of course, in millions of times, how is that? Arjuna is very surprised. You are my contemporary. How is that you taught this Bhagavad Gita to millions of years ago? Sun God was one. How is that possible? So this surprise to mitigate, then Krishna says, you and I are existed so many millions, all the time we existed. So millions of years ago, we both are existed. You also existed, I also existed. But I remember all of them and you don't remember any of them. So Arjuna didn't remember any of them. So that's the difference between God and the living entity. So God remembers everything. Krishna is God. He remembers everything. And we don't remember anything. Arjuna didn't know what he was previously. They are actually Nara Narayana. So he is Nara and Krishna is Narayana. So Arjuna doesn't know. And Arjuna passed through so many millions and births and he doesn't remember anything. But Krishna remember everything. That's the only the difference. That's the difference. That's not only the difference. That's the difference between living entity and the God. God knows everything. God is gross. He is all powerful and everything he can do, he remembers everything. All the activities are done by him. But living entity is only in transmissal, a small part of his amsha. This mama eva amsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. So we are the amsha as part and parcel of Krishna. It means we have all the qualities of Krishna, but it's in a very minute part. And another difference is, and Krishna remembers everything. He knows everything. He knows all the living entities. We know none of them. Only some living entity which come in contact with us in the material bodies. We may know them. Till they are in that particular material body, we know them. When they leave that particular body, then go away, we don't know them. We will not be able to recognize them. Even if with that body, that living entity comes in contact with us, we don't know. Sometimes it happens, like, we think some new person comes and we feel, he's a familiar person. I must have, seen him. You are very familiar. Some first time we are seeing, but still familiar. That's the impressions from our past lives or anything. That living entity must have been in contact with us. That's why we are feeling that impression. That's how we would know we are passed through millions and millions of years. Where Krishna says here exactly here, Arjuna, you don't remember anything. All so many millions and millions of births, we are there, we are all the time there, but we are not there. That's the difference between Supreme Personality of Godhead and we. And there are so many other Krishna, that he is the Supreme and he is like an ocean and we are a drop of ocean. See, the function a ocean can do, a drop can't do. So whatever function Krishna can do, we can't do. But we can try, we have the same qualities and what Krishna's activities, but some living entities, we understand that some living entities, they develop, they evaluate, although they are tiny, and there are processes to evaluate, get more energies. So whatever the living entity inherent, it is like a living entity is like a seed actually. Example, a banyan tree. The seed of the banyan tree is so small seed. put it in the earth, and it sprouts and becomes a tree. Small, this thing, nursery, then it becomes a gigantic tree. It becomes, so that capacity is there. Like a living entity is like it's a seed. In seed, but there are processes. Like, to banyan tree to grow such a huge, gigantic tree, it has to be put in the earth, then you have to water it, then it has to get the nutrients, what it needed. It becomes a big tree. Similarly, this living entity also process. It can develop all those divine qualities through the process of and yoga and studies. You can develop all those qualities and you become gigantic, or you develop your qualities. I won't say you become very gigantic or you become equal to God or anything, but you can develop godly qualities. Similarly, like in a tree, a seed becomes, sprouts, and then becomes, grows as a big tree. Similarly, living entity also attain is whatever the original powers the living entity has, the Atma has, it could be developed through the yoga process. There are processes mentioned in the Vedic literatures. All that's what actually we do, the austerities and all this, to develop these godly qualities. All these Vaishnavas, we and great acharyas, they developed those godly qualities. They sometimes we worship the acharyas. So they are, developed godly qualities. Since they developed those godly qualities, they are, worshipable. We worship them. So what actually the function of the living entity in this material world is develop our qualities, like the material body. What this say a bad bargain, we can say, because of our karma we came into this material world, and our main purpose in life, in the material life, what we have. So get out of this cycle of birth and death, which keeps us in this material world, and that's our karmas. We have to negate our bad karmas, whatever we got, and good karmas also we have to negate by devoting our services to the Lord, Supreme Lord, Krishna. So when we sincerely do service to Krishna and chant his name, Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Krishna says twice in this Bhagavad Gita, same verse he repeats. Always think of me, do service to me, and worship me. When we regularly worship Krishna, do service to him, and always think of him, all his pastimes. When we think of him, then we develop those qualities, and then we will be able to get out of this material world. To get out of this material world, we always think of Krishna and his pastimes. We have to remember his pastimes. When we remember his pastimes, all those his qualities, whatever, it comes to our memory, our reflection. When it comes to our reflection, we feel pleasure within us. We feel the pleasure when we hear stories about Krishna. When we feel the pleasure, when that pleasure elements get into our body, then we are actually get out of this stress of this material environment. So to negate the material environment, we need to always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his activities. When we always think of him, all his activities, then we are able to negate the stress what the material life gives to us, because stress will be always there. In material life, we always have stress. Whatever the activity we do, in that reflects two things, duality in the material life. That duality brings in pleasure and pain both. Do activity whatever pleasurable. When we do, we get the pleasure. The living entity enjoys the pleasure. And the activity which is not pleasurable, unpleasurable, you get that stress on that. Those stress need to go away. When we immediately get out of this thing, then we think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his glories and chant his names. Then our worries, whatever in this material world, goes away. It comes down and we feel pleasure. At that time is the Anandamaya Kosha. The living entity goes into Anandamaya Kosha. That's the kosha we need to remain always. If we will remain in Anandamaya Kosha, then we are always, we are as good as Krishna. Although we are tiny, we are as good as Krishna in this material body itself, because when the Atma is living in the Anandamaya Kosha. So our target has to be remain in the Anandamaya Kosha. Then how we will remain in the Anandamaya Kosha? Only by this activity. The devotional activity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we do the devotional activity, remember His name, chant His name, dance about Him. Like, when in the Kirtan we dance. At the time of dancing, we forget everything. We, pull everyone and, want to jump here and there and dance. So that time, actually, the Atma is Anandamaya Kosha. The Anandamaya Kosha is essential to be remaining always pleasurable, pleasant. If we are in Anandamaya Kosha, we are very pleasant. If we are not in Anandamaya Kosha, suppose if we are in Manomaya Kosha, at that time, all our stress comes in Manomaya Kosha. When we are Manomaya, we are thinking of so many things, all the positives and negatives and everything we think. At that time, Atma is in the Manomaya Kosha. Manomaya Kosha, it thinks everything. Reflections comes in the mind. That mind, Manomaya Kosha is the mind. The Atma is that it remains in the mind, connected to the mind. So it is not independent. It is connected to the mind, the part of the mind. So when Atma is with the Manomaya Kosha, at that time we get all the stress, all the activities, what we need to do, what I have to do this, I have to do this, all those things comes. At that time, Atma is in Manomaya Kosha. When it in Vijnanamaya Kosha, it thinks of all the new things what we could do. Materially as well as spiritually also. Spiritually, what new things we could do? How do we, increase our activities to please Krishna? That comes from Vijnanamaya Kosha. When the Atma lives in the Vijnanamaya Kosha of our body, material body, at that time it thinks of all those things. If you are a devotee, then you think of how do I increase my service to Krishna? How do I increase my activity as spreading Krishna consciousness or teaching somebody else, doing help to somebody? It's all comes from Vijnanamaya Kosha. When the Atma is in a Vijnanamaya Kosha, you think of all those and doing activities, or other the living entities which are suffering in this material world. You think of that. The Atma is engaged in those activities, those things which you would be able to help the living entity in the material world who are suffering. The living entity could be anybody, any living entity. It may be beast, bird, or anything, all the living entity. Mainly, of course, we are connected with the mainly human beings. Our activities, our contact is always with the human beings. That's why we think of our relatives, our friends, and all those things. But those living entities also, like beast, bird, and all those, they are also living entity. Whatever category they are there, because of their karma, they are there in that particular body. So if they are suffering, if we try to help them, if somebody is suffering, if we try to help them, actually we are negating our whatever the bad karma we may be carrying within our, so we are negating. That all comes through the Manomaya Kosha of the body when the living entities lives in the Manomaya Kosha. So we do all those activities. Then comes a Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. Vijnanamaya Kosha, we do creative things. And when we go to Anandamaya Kosha, that actually where we need to. It means at that time, we are in the super modes of three material modes. That super material mode we are there. Shuddha Sattva, we are in that. At that time, we are always pleasurable. So Manomaya Kosha. What did you say that? Manomaya Kosha, we all the material activity comes and everything, whatever accumulated with us, all the material activity we do, at that time our Atma is there in Manomaya Kosha. When the material activity we do all those, any activity, all the material activities, whatever activity we do, at that time Atma is living in the Manomaya Kosha. In Manomaya Kosha, all the mind, reflections, everything, what past we did, what we are going to do now, what will be the next, it's all comes to our this memory. It's in mind. It comes because its Atma is connected with that. At that time, Manomaya Kosha, we are there. In that Kosha, when the living entity is there, it thinks of all those things. all the activities, whatever he suffered and many lifetimes and all those things, suffering, stress and everything, material life stress and all those things. At that time, the living entity is in Manomaya Kosha. When it is in Vijnanamaya Kosha, we think of all those things. Like, you may be thinking, I want to do preaching this, I have to go to this college, I have to preach this. At that time, your Atma is in Vijnanamaya Kosha. Vijnana means knowledge, getting knowledge, getting all the knowledge. Atma is living in that Vijnanamaya Kosha. Of course, that's affected by three modes of material nature. But we have to try to be in that. Our goal has to be, living entity has to make a goal. I should live in Vijnanamaya Kosha. So then creative things. Then finally comes when Vijnanamaya Kosha, you did all those things. Then you go and do service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chant His name. Dance for Him. At that time, you are Anandamaya Kosha. When you chant here, dance here, and pull people and dance and do, at the time you are in Anandamaya Kosha. That's the kosha we need to be. Living entity has to be in that particular kosha. When you live in that kosha, you are very pleasurable. Material, all the stress doesn't touch you. At that time, when we dance, we don't know about the material activity. Oh, I have to do this, you all forget. When you stop dancing, then you only think, oh, I'm about to do this, I'm about to do that. But till you are dancing and doing the service here, then you are not bothered about all those things. When you are in the temple and do all those activities, so then you are not bothered about the material, what happens and all those. Only when you get out, then you remember, oh, I have to do this. At that time, stress and all those things comes. Otherwise, no stress or anything. So that's the place where we need to remain. So the main activity for the living entity, especially human body, this, doing service to the Supreme Lord. When you do service to the Supreme, read about Him and do activities for Him. So like, preaching, what you guys are doing, preaching, going out and colleges and then preaching, that's the activity. Of course, that at the time your soul is in Vijnanamaya Kosha, but it leads to Anandamaya Kosha. Then we further, when you did this, okay, I want to conduct this particular program, I want, read this Bhagavad Gita verse and give a lecture on this for all the living entity who will come, and you give that lecture. While you are giving that lecture, you are in Anandamaya Kosha, because you are feeling pleasure to give that knowledge to the other person. The living entity attending your classes, you are giving that knowledge, you are feeling pleasure. So at that time, you are in Anandamaya Kosha. This Kosha, we need to be there. When, suppose death comes, when the death comes, at that time, if we are in Anandamaya Kosha, then definitely we get liberated. If we are in any other kosha, if you are in the Vijnanamaya kosha, you may have to come back. So whatever, in the Vijnana you wanted to do, that's what the, planning you doing. So do things. So you may have to come back if you are in Vijnanamaya kosha. At the time of death, you're definitely, if you are in Anandamaya kosha, you will get liberated. So these 5 koshas of human body are, we need to understand that 5 koshas. The first kosha is the Annamaya kosha, gross body. So where actually that, we definitely need to give away when, we die. But that's what we call death. We have to give up this body. Then Pranamaya kosha, that's also to be given up, because that's the breathing. The air goes in and goes out, goes in and goes out. When air goes in and goes out, it means living entity is there. There's the fuel, whatever the fuel it needs for the, the body to maintain, that air, the air takes it to all the cells of the body. So all this blood and everything, the function, the gross body creates the function of, digesting the food what we eat, out of absorbing the nutrition, and that nutrition, whatever is there in the blood, that blood will be carried to the air, through the veins and all, it will be carried. And this in the blood, whatever the nutrients are there, that goes to the cell, whatever the cell particular nutrient it needs, it's provided by this. So air is needed, and blood is created by this gross body, and the air is carrying all those things. And that what sustains this body. Because of the air, that so many different types of airs are there. So where Atma is involved in that. So when that Atma is that Pranamaya kosha, When that air is gone out, the stopped, this breathing is stopped. When the breathing is stopped, Atma is gone. So long as Atma is there, breathing is goes on. The air is goes on in the body. The moment the living entity leaves the body, the air stops. So that air, these two koshas, actually we are leaving it here. This, when we die, means these two koshas are given up, and the rest three koshas we are going with us. That's the subtle body. We call it a subtle body with the three koshas. This Manomaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, and Anandamaya kosha. This Anandamaya kosha, where we are always very pleasurable, connected with the Supreme Personality of God. It means we are connected with the gross, like we are connected with the Supreme, if we could say the electricity is connected with the major, whatever the electricity board is there or anything. So that's the connection. So we have to be tried to be in that particular Anandamaya kosha, so that our activity has to be directed towards serving the Supreme Lord and chanting about Him, remembering about Him all the time. Whatever the knowledge we should increase that through Vijnanamaya kosha and Anandamaya kosha. Manomaya kosha for the material activities, for the activities. Vijnanamaya kosha create activities. Anandamaya kosha serving the Supreme Lord. So in these three koshas, when the living entity remains, and it will be able to get out of this cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, we will be here and we'll come back and go back, and that's what actually. So I'll stop here, and so if you any questions and comments.
Like those who are very purified, they will do only activities. Like
yes.
What you are describing about Vijnana.
Yeah.
But they will be internally in the this because they are doing a pure platform service.
Correct. So they are more elevated souls because the different category of elevation. So we are small parts of Krishna, small parts, like example I had given earlier, the seed of a banyan tree. The small seed, banyan tree seed. When you put it in the mud and water it, and it sprouts and grows and becomes a gigantic banyan tree. Similarly, the Atma, all the qualities has, all the power is there, but it has to be developed different levels. So when we develop in the water, what is watering? Watering is about this spiritual knowledge. When we water it and we develop those qualities within, it grows. Like we are evolving. When Atma is there, Atma is evolving, becoming Jinjani, like big acharyas. They are developed those qualities. They are as good as Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they develop. So similarly, we are also developing the qualities. We are not reached that stage. We are developing the qualities. You may develop, certain levels. You may. So we are in certain level. The acharyas may be in big level. Like Narada Muni is as good as Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he had developed those qualities. So similarly, we also could develop quality that comes to the Vijnanamaya kosha. When we are in Vijnanamaya kosha, we think of all those things and we develop. Then when we go to Anandamaya kosha, then we are pleasurable. And the living entity, the Atma living in Anandamaya kosha, can do all those activities because it becomes super. Because he has already passed this, and going from there and coming back is not. Of course, yeah, always the Atma is goes from Anandamaya kosha, Manomaya kosha, this Vijnanamaya kosha, Anandamaya kosha. It comes and goes back. Sometimes somebody may not be coming to Anandamaya kosha at all, because he will be always suffering and in a stress. He is not in Anandamaya kosha, he is in Manomaya kosha only, suffering stress. Oh, this difficulty, that difficulty. He thinks of all those things, and he is always in Manomaya kosha, always mind. You see, call it mental or something like that. So Manomaya kosha, that living entity is in that kosha. So then when he goes to Vijnanamaya kosha, at that time he thinks, oh, he does so many activities. He does. Then when he goes to Anandamaya kosha, it was he is a realized soul.
Anandamaya kosha is there. He will be doing some activities which may happen like the eating or taking the body, but they are doing in Anandamaya stage.
Yeah, that stage is, if that stage is, they may come to this stage also. They may come to the Manomaya stage also. They come, but they go back. That for easy for them. The somebody who is very knowledgeable, he come and go is for easy. But for us, if those are not knowledgeable to go how to go back, it is not possible. So it becomes very difficult. For them, it's easy.
They will do the preaching also. They always releasing that.
Correct, exactly. So they can do that activity. The normal activities, like, very realized souls, great sciences also. Sometimes they talk up all the, normal things. What you eat and this thing, all those things. It means they are not in our stage. They are in much higher stage. But they do the normal activities because that the normal activities of the nature of the body. Nature of the Annamaya Kosha is like that. They do that. Nature of the Manomaya Kosha also is like that only. So whatever the activity we all done previously, it remembers, it attached to it. It automatically happens. Without the intervention of the soul, it happens. You are not intending to do it, but you've done it. Sometimes it happens. You do something you are not intending to do. Your hand does it because of normal practice. So that's how it happens. Okay?
But they are not in that because
they are not in that stage. They are far advanced stage and they are as good as Supreme Personality of Godhead, the realized souls. So realized souls and they develop like seed to big banyan tree. Big acharyas are like banyan trees in this material world. We are just seeds and they are all banyan trees. They developed all those things and they can create so many banyan trees again, give the seed and so many banyan trees. So that's how actually big acharyas then create, so discipline succession and so many disciples and they spread this message. So that's what's needed. Okay. Thank you so much. So Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Sri Radha Gopiolam ki jai. Thank you very much. You know how to stop this? Oh, Pitambar Prabhu.